Hello, everybody, and welcome to the EuRA Spring Summit. We're delighted that you've been able to join us for this 2 weeks of short sessions and a bit of networking at the end of this week, which will be chaotic but fun. We are delighted to be doing a third virtual event, and thank you so much to all of our speakers, moderators, and of course the sponsors who've made this possible. Tad, what's coming up?
Coming up, well, hopefully we're going to do a face-to-face meeting in early September at Heathrow Airport, which makes it very easy for anyone who wants to come. And of course, we will be in Seville next March, and booking details for the hotel will be sent out to members in early September. All details of everything we're doing will be in bulletins on the website, and we really look forward to seeing you in person, face to face.
So keep on looking out for those bulletins, and we will keep you up to date. We'll also be running our briefing sessions throughout the year. We're continuing with those. If you've got a topic you'd like to bring to the EuRA family, please let me know. In the meantime, we will be doing a further virtual event in October. We're going to do it over 3 days. It will be an exhibition and networking event, and we're going to be using a new shiny platform. So all that remains to say is I hope you really enjoyed the Spring Summit. From Tad and I, take care. We really hope to see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Tad and Dom. We're looking forward to seeing everybody in person too. Are you ready? Are you ready to enjoy the EuRA Spring Summit in the comfort of your own time zone? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome. We're so glad you're here. My name is Michelle Bramstoft, and I'm your host for today. Every day, as you know, the Spring Summit will be broadcast in consecutive days. Every day, one of my fabulous fellow board members will be your host. They will introduce 3 teaming topics. Number 1, our sparkling sponsors. Number 2, our scintillating sessions. And number 3, our intrepid Ignite speakers. Part of your sensational success is due to our loyal and sparkling sponsors. Today, we're grateful to Dwellworks for their support, their loyal support. Do you want to bring back some marvelous memories? Take a look at this. Amazing memories. Do we love our gala dinners or what? Thank you again, Dwellworks. Our opening speaker is a fond and friendly face to the EuRA stage. She's enlightened us with her intelligent insight. She's entertained us with her spirited sing-along songs. And she's enriched us with her seemingly effortless eloquence. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Frances Edmonds.
Thank you, Michelle. And on behalf of the entire EuRA family, that's each and every one of us, thank you for your enthusiasm and your support and your leadership in a particularly difficult time for the relo business, the global mobility profession. Thank you. I mean that. And I can't wait to see you again in Seville. So welcome everybody to the EuRA Spring Summit. Who would have thought when last we met in Munich that it was going to be like this, a video conference? Never mind, never mind. We will soon be back together again with the friendship and good fun of the EuRA family. But you know, I don't know where you are, scattered all over the world as you are, but I think each and every one of us, whatever country we're in, has had one compelling experience that we all share. And that's that we're all in awe of the frontline workers, those heroes and heroines in the medical profession and the support services who have seen us through this pandemic. And I've been thinking, what are the qualities, what are the values of these heroes and heroines of the pandemic that we sort of admire and that we find extraordinary and that we show enormous gratitude for? Well, first of all, I think we've been in awe of their empathy towards individuals who are suffering, who are stressed, who are anxious, who are living through trauma. So it's empathy for individuals who are going through difficult times. That's what we found extraordinary and admirable. And then we've looked at these people and we've seen their extraordinary understanding, their deep understanding of complex issues that keep changing, and yet they've been able to accommodate those changes and they've been able to work with them. So they've had empathy and they've had understanding, empathy for individuals, understanding of issues. What have these heroes and heroines of the pandemic also shown us? They've shown us responsiveness to situations that are highly volatile and keep changing day by day. Empathy, understanding, responsiveness. And what else have these heroes and heroines of the pandemic demonstrated to us in spades? They've shown us adaptability to environments where nobody has ever been before, unknown, uncharted territory. Empathy for individuals, understanding of issues, responsiveness to situations, adaptability to environments, EuRA. And it occurred to me, my extended family of EuRA, that these are the very values, these are the very attributes that you yourselves show to the people that you deal with on a daily basis when you are moving people around the world. We're now looking at the effects that the pandemic has had on people who look after other people. And we're seeing this sort of burnout, or if it's not burnout, we're seeing the stress that it creates for people who are always managing other people in times of anxiety and trauma. And I wouldn't call it burnout, but it's certainly something akin to what we would call pandemic fatigue. And the best metaphor I can think of that is a metaphor that I've taken from a gardening program that I saw on the television not very long ago. The gardening expert was going along in his garden and he saw this plant in a pot, and it was it wasn't exactly dead, but it was kind of withering and sort of a bit lopsided. And he yanked it out of its pot, and you could see this poor withered plant. The roots were going round and round and round in a tight little ball. And the gardening expert said, this plant is pot bound. It no longer can fit into this pot. This environment is not positive. It can't get the nutrients and the energy it requires from this environment. If I don't repot this plant, it's going to wither and die. Now, I think that a lot of us are feeling this kind of pot-bound phenomenon on the scale of sort of emotional well-being. We're not exactly clinically depressed, but neither are we thriving in the way we would like to. We are pot-bound, and when you're pot-bound, you have to repot. So I want to tease out with you now some of the elements that I think we've all learned from this pandemic and that will stand us in great stead for when we come back thrusting in the new year before us. Today is springtime, and I think it's a time of rejuvenation and regrowth and new growth. So let's have a look at the R of repotting. R is for reframe. Do you know what? There's nothing you can do about the facts of your life. Those don't change, but what you can do is change your response to those facts. You can reframe, you can turn negatives into positives. You can also decide, if you can't decide on the facts of what's happening to you, on the genre that you wish to live your life in, the genre of your narrative. Is it going to be a tragedy, or are you going to turn things into an adventure story? And the reframe I've been seeing with a lot of our colleagues is that they've used this opportunity to think again about how they do business. Reframe. Think of the positive attributes that you can derive from any situation. Elect your response to a situation. Don't react, respond. And the E of repotting is energy. Energy levels are dwindling. And why are energy levels dwindling? Because we are people persons. We are pack animals. We need human contact. You're a family. You of all people understand that. And I think we have to be very careful nowadays about our wellness and well-being, looking after ourselves. We are the people who look after other people in stress and in traumatic situations. It's absolutely crucial at this liminal time to look after our own wellness and well-being and energy levels. The P in repot is for purpose. Now, I know about all the professional development tools that you have at your disposal, all the extraordinary programs, the quality seal, everything that's done for you by the EuRA family to improve your personal and professional development. We're very good on the what and the how. But now is perhaps the time when we ask ourselves the why, the purpose. Why do we do what we do? And I put it to you, think about this, and we'll discuss it when we meet again in Seville, I hope next year. The purpose of what you do is that you genuinely want to see people moving around the world so that businesses can align the people, the top talent, with the business strategy. And why do we do this? Because that is what makes the world's economy go round. We are the people who make the world's economy go round. We are the people who will be absolutely crucial in the economic recovery, please God, to come. Now, if that's not a purpose worth getting out of bed for, I don't know what is. O, in the repotting scenario, is for openness. We have seen ourselves work in ways we would never have imagined when we met in Munich. Who would have thought we would be having video conferencing? Who would have thought we could work from home? Openness to new ways of working. Well, how about extending that openness to new types of people, new kinds of people, people who we never thought could be included in our business, or we never thought could actually be part and parcel of the EuRA family? I don't know. You're as open as I know in people, but I've spent a couple of years in Stanford, and it's taught me one thing. It's that every single individual you ever meet has something to add to the sum total of your knowledge and your experience. And the wider that community is, the more geared up you are to cope with what is in itself a massively interesting, heterogeneous community in the world out there. Your clients are heterogeneous folk. So should your business be. And the final T of repot is transitions. We're all saying to one another what we're going to do when the new normal returns or when we get over this pandemic. But the truth of the matter is, you are never finished with your changes. Just get used to managing change. Get used to managing transitions and embrace it with curiosity, with openness, with a degree of diversity and inclusivity that we've never before seen in our business. And I think we'll find that we will be rejuvenated. We will come back better and stronger and better be able to do our business and serve our clients and customers in the future. I can't wait to see you again in real life, in person, in Seville. But until then, enjoy the next session on inclusion and diversity and promise me that you will repot. Think about your energy levels, think about reframing your problems, think about openness, think about purpose, and think about the fact that whatever we're doing, whatever change we're managing, it's just a practice for the next time.
Thank you, Frances. Thank you for the kind words in the beginning. And repot, I love it. You are the master of acronyms. And we are the people who move the world. I love it. We are going to kick off our scintillating session with a deep dive into diversity and inclusion. And Laura Levinson and her star-studded panelists are going to take us there. Laura, the virtual stage is yours.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's so great to be with you all, even if it's just virtual, although I would love to be in person. We are thrilled to follow Frances. What a great opening we had from her, and the idea. I love the acronyms. I'm never really good at them myself, but I just can't even say what it's like to follow in her footsteps. I'm joined today by 3 tremendous colleagues in the field of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. We added a few more, so I guess I'm going to have to come up with something for DEIB. But anyway, I've got Mercedes D'Angelo from CAI, Frank Belmonte from Red Hat, and Heather DeCruz Cornair from REA, who all have such interesting and unique backgrounds themselves. I wish we had more than just the hour to tell you about our experiences with diversity, but that's not really what we're here for. We're really here to talk about the interplay between diversity and mobility. And I think it's just been fascinating to see how much the pandemic has changed our business, I think in some ways for the good when it comes to diversity, at least from where I'm sitting in the seat of consulting and advisory services working for one of the larger RMCs out there. So without further ado, I'm going to launch right into some questions for my panelists, and here they are. Hi, guys.
Hey,
So
hello, everyone.
Yeah, we're all sitting in very different places, by the way. I'm in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Mercedes is in New Jersey, USA. Heather in the UK, and Frank in Barcelona. Welcome, everybody. So I'm going to start with you, Frank. And I'd like to ask you maybe for the sake of defining, since this is such a huge topic, we kind of have to narrow it down a little bit. So in your opinion, what do you consider to be the main pillars of diversity and inclusiveness, or diversity, equity, and inclusiveness, if you would? You're muted. Oh, you're muted.
You missed the important part that I said. Well, I just want to say that I'm very delighted to be part of this year's EuRA Summit. And I'm glad to see that EuRA has actually chosen diversity, equity, and inclusion as an agenda item in this year's conference, because there's really a renewed focus amongst many companies about this important topic. So the question is around pillars on DEI. I will answer that in the context of each initiatives that support one of the pillars of these initiatives would be around opportunity. And, much has been said about equal opportunities, and many companies have that written down in their company handbook. They are equal opportunity employer. But what we're really referring to here is that companies making DEI, an approach to DEI being intentional. That is through your hiring strategy. So when you look at your workforce in the company, do you actually have a diverse group of people working in your company? So what do you do then to change that if you don't have? The second thing is around looking at your management leadership positions. Are they actually well represented of diverse groups? And if not, then coming up with programs that would develop future leaders in the position. So that's one pillar. Think of the equitable opportunity. The other pillar is around equitable pay. And this is when you look at what your pay practices are in the company. Do you do job leveling, job grading, rather than looking at where the company or where the person's background is? So that's one pillar around equitable pay. And one pillar that I would also say is around reflecting in our community. It's around inviting communities in your organization and represent those underrepresented communities, like the Black community, the LGBTQ communities. That is also one pillar that I would say as it relates to that.
Thank you so much, Frank. I'm just going to ask, we're having a little bit of technical issue. I hope that the audience can hear fairly well. When you're speaking, if the others on the panel could go on mute, that would be helpful. But I think we got the gist of it mostly. Frank was talking about equitable pay, equal opportunities, and certainly those are really important. Mercedes, if you could chime in and give us perhaps some other perspectives of what you think of when you think of the pillars.
Thank you. And I love that Frank is, well, first of all, greetings to everyone. I am so excited to be here. I wish I could see all of your beautiful faces. One of the things I love about EuRA over any conference I have ever attended is the diversity that we have. How phenomenal is it? So thank you all for being here. Frank very aptly spoke about structural issues within organizations that need to be addressed in order to create true diversity and inclusion and equity, right? What I want to talk about, in addition, as another layer of thought, is how do we create the environment where people feel that they are being treated equitably and want to give their whole self to the project that they're working on, so their authentic selves. And that really depends on some psychosocial pillars, as it were. One is psychological safety and trust. How safe do I feel? As destination consultants, those of you on this conference know that creating an experience of welcoming that assignee into the new city and helping them feel safe physically, psychologically is super important. And that contributes to an inclusive organization. Also, how do we have respectful conversations? There's a big cultural difference. National cultural difference as well as organizational differences, right? So if you're moving to a new country, how do you respectfully disagree? How do you respectfully give your opinion? And the burden these days in the global economy is for not just the assignee to be culturally aware and culturally adept and agile, but also for the receiving team to be equally adept and agile. So what are we doing to support that? And then allyship. How do we become true allies? And this is one of the harder things for international assignees, because by nature of the assignment itself and leaving all of your support network, you're going into a situation where you are, by definition, more isolated and lonelier. So how do we help them make connections to the community and within the organization, so they have allyship given to them where they're included, but also where they can promote allyship and some of the values of the home organization, if that's what they're going through. And the final piece is really going back to Frank's comment about resources. So an organization has to really look at what are the resources and challenges for people who are relocating to another country that may have a very different setup, whether it's issues within that country, such as maybe there's a lot of homogeneity. If you're moving to Vietnam, if you're moving to Japan, if you're moving to the Philippines, what is that office looking like? So these are the things that we have to think. What are the resources we can bring to the table to create an inclusive and open workforce for everyone? So that's what I would focus on in addition to what Frank said, Laura.
Wonderful. Yeah. I mean, the challenge about this topic is there's so many different directions to go in, right? And many of us in EuRA have had the experience ourselves of being international assignees. So we're aware of it, and that certainly helps, going back to the empathy piece. But just because you've had an experience doesn't mean that your next experience is going to be anything like your first one. We all know that. So that's another important factor. So Heather, I'm going to ask you to weigh in on the next question, which is, what impact have all these initiatives, diversity, equity, and inclusiveness, had over the last decade? And what insights into dual career issues have you noticed and have emerged from your research?
Yeah, well, it's all about, for me, the accompanying spouse. It's about professional work identity. So the main impact of DE&I initiatives over the last decade has been really to bring visibility to the mobility challenges of dual career families. Research tells us dual career issues have been around for a while. It shows us what's visible, for instance, the struggles facing this demographic. They're now firmly in the forefront, and it's become increasingly more transparent and measurable. So what does the research tell us? According to Permits Foundation, a non-profit, we know that since 2008, dual careers has had a tangible impact on both attracting and retaining talent for international assignments. Let's look at some numbers. Starting in 2012, 96% of employers stated that the partners of international assignees should be allowed to work in the host country. Over 51% said that international assignments had been turned down due to spouse career, and 21% reported an early return for the same reason. Subsequent research in 2015 and 2018 reinforced these views. Also, there are spillover effects of a working spouse, having a positive impact not only on integration, but also overall health and well-being. So DE&I initiatives have helped bring visibility to dual careers. It's now firmly in the forefront, and it's being measured. Global mobility service delivery needs to measure this cost benefit and ROI. So providing metrics or feedback tools that demonstrate the value of dual career initiatives is one of the best practices for REA as suppliers of career transition management to this demographic. We measure the effectiveness of the service directly with the spouse. We track key management reporting data, report back quarterly to the RMC. We share multi-layered challenges by way of a case study approach. We demonstrate the solutions and value driving the service. So to sum up, dual careers is and continues to be one of the most important factors affecting employee mobility.
Couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I know for myself, there's no way that I'm single now, but when I was raising my kids and, married, there's no way I would have taken an assignment without that. And of course, now with so many different types of partnerships, it gets challenging. So the whole process of getting visas, and then, we may think 96% was the number, I think you say that partners should be able to work, but
yeah,
just because we feel that way doesn't mean that the receiving government's going to feel that way. So that's the big challenge, right? We can't make the rules. We can only accept what we're headed for. So thank you for that. And the metrics are so important. Without knowing the numbers, how are we ever going to make change? So I really appreciate your input, Heather, on that. Mercedes, I'm going to go to you for a moment because, of course, CAI does both cultural and destination services. Would love to know a little bit more about how we handle families that are, you know, non-traditional, if you will, and how, you know, that transition goes into neighborhoods or cities where it may be more difficult because of a lack of diversity. So how, you know, and how, I guess another one add on to that question would be, how do we deal with current events, like specifically right now, some of the things that are happening, let's say, in Hong Kong or wherever, you know?
Wherever, right. And there's stuff happening all the time. And if it hasn't happened yet, it'll happen soon. Well, to start with, just helping people transition into neighborhoods from a destination perspective, it's really important that you have people who understand what the current climate is in each of those cities. I know in the US, every city is different. I'm sure all of you are aware of some of the social and current fires that we have going on of activism, Black Lives Matters, crimes against Asian Americans. We have an alarming number of growing hate crimes in our country. So, which goes quite to the opposite of diversity and equity and inclusion. For example, helping someone come into a neighborhood in Dallas, where we're headquartered. One of my colleagues who manages our destination services, May Higazi, and who's from Cairo, is Muslim. And we had a client, one of Weikert's clients actually, come to us, and they were Muslim. And it was a wonderful connection, because even though she wasn't the actual destination consultant, she was just the person in charge of managing that service delivery for that assignee and for the Weikert account leader. She actually went out of her way, because she was able to, and took the family to her mosque and was able to show them where there was a thriving community of Muslims. So for a lot of people, their religion is a plug-in, and religion, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, stereotypes, assumptions, or even the temperature of the climate can be unwelcoming. So helping them connect to a neighborhood that accepts them is super helpful. I also want to bring up the value of cultural training, because I think cultural training has to go beyond, and I know we're certainly doing this at Cultural Awareness, going beyond just country differences, communication differences, and how to bridge the gap. It's also about what is the climate, you know, to either it's the city, the region of that country, or to that country. So for example, during the #MeToo, groundswell of activity around sexual harassment. We have a client who is in the fashion industry who brought Italians and French, no offense to my wonderful colleagues who are Italian and French and business partners, but their way of communicating informally outside of the room was much more, much looser and less constrained than what we expect in the US. So being able to train people about what's politically correct in each country and in each organization, because while, and I don't know, Frank, what your thoughts are around this, while Red Hat may have an overarching culture and values as an organization, the feel in each office, I imagine, and tell me if I'm wrong, is quite different. So cultural preparation has to include what is that country like, what are the hot issues, as well as what are the organizational values of the people, the company that they work in.
Well, nice segue for Frank. Frank, maybe you want to start by answering that. And then I would love, I think this audience in particular really appreciates the opportunity to hear directly from a corporate side and what expectations you have of the type of support that all of your providers could be giving. I mean, it's, some of it's common sense, but hearing it from you directly is so invaluable. So take it away.
Yeah. So we talk about a lot of companies having this focus on diversity, inclusion, and equity, right? So there's a lot of initiatives at an enterprise level to make sure that they are actually really hiring from underrepresented communities. So some of the projects that we're doing at Red Hat is really focused on targeted hiring. And how do we do that? We do enablement sessions with our recruiters on things like how do you remove bias in recruitment. So that's one area. The second area is around when we have new managers that join the organization as part of their onboarding, they need to sit into a curriculum around how do you manage a diverse team. That's also one sort of like project that we're currently doing at Red Hat. Now, how can providers support us in our initiatives? A lot of companies are starting to look at non-traditional go-to-market as a source of their talent. So I'll give you an example. At Red Hat, we have a lot of IT engineers. We hire them from Russia or from Brazil because they have a good pool of IT engineers in those locations, but they do not really offer that much diversity. So now we're looking at non-traditional go-to-market like Albania, because Albania provides a good source of female IT engineers. We've also realized that there are a lot of good female sales people coming from Egypt. So now that has become an expansion opportunity for us. So my advice to the provider would be partner with your clients, talk about what their talent strategies are, and look at how can you customize your product, because these are a new territory for us. We don't really know how easy it is to hire people from these markets. Mm-hmm. And even if we can we actually integrate them easily in the country where we need to relocate them to? So you do really need to be in the consulting space, customize your product a little bit more to support the talent strategy. And not to digress a little bit about the topic of the AI, as you know, we talk about the future ways of working. And now is a time to really reflect about your product. Is it still relevant to the time and age today? So is accompanied home finding still apply? Or would you say maybe a virtual home finding would actually support in this time and age? So I think this is an area or the right time to be thinking outside the box and being out there.
Great. Well, I will say this, one of the interesting adaptations that the destination service providers and any other face-to-face providers for that matter have made in this time is the opportunity to do things online. And it has been really well received. The work that all of you out there have done to adapt is just incredible, the innovation. And I will say this, oops, I need you guys to go on mute again. The feedback is bad, please. Thank you. So the point being, many of those adaptations, our clients have said, you know what, we like to keep going with this opportunity to continue to offer the option for online services. It allows people to do a lot more from home before they leave. And it also just simply, from a diversity standpoint, it kind of levels the playing field, and at least in the pre-decision time, allows folks the opportunity who really can't make that pre-trip to consider the assignment before going in a way that is pretty cost effective from a client perspective. So newer policies that I'm writing are including various options now for destination services. So I personally see this as a big plus. Maybe some of the revenue stream will be a little lower, but I think net the volume might actually increase because now you've got, 2 products where you had 1. So thanks so much for your input. Now it's Heather's turn. We want to hear from you a little bit. I'm going to just basically ask what you see as the experience of working with all different kinds of spouse partners, let's say. From that lens, maybe you can share some of your insights that you've gained over your many years in this role.
Yeah,
and I'll go on mute.
Absolutely. First of all, I am an expat spouse. I'm also a business psychologist working in the field for over 15 years, but I am a proud expat spouse. I still find in my work that the spouse is hidden in plain sight. By hidden, I could also say not included. I could also say not given equitable consideration. Previously, I mentioned industry data highlighting the importance of professional work identity. So if you would, just let me tell you a little bit about my own real life experience. As a young professional, many years ago, I relocated from the UK to Germany independently, found work, established my career in the German market, and met my husband. Ooh la la, he's French. We were a typical dual career couple, and we had identical incomes. He was offered an expat assignment in Japan. We made a joint decision to take the opportunity. We got married. We moved, and I left behind a successful career which I was unable to continue in Tokyo. I received no career transition support, no access to the job market. I lost overnight my work and social identity. Alone, I experienced my first ever earthquake in a high-rise apartment building, and after suffering extreme culture shock, I felt completely isolated. So desperate, I called a crisis line, similar to the Samaritans. I kept this hidden from my husband, as I did not want to admit to him that I couldn't cope. Months later, I ended up volunteering at that same crisis centre. I built a new social networking community, and this became a pivotal and transformational change in my own professional identity. The work of REA in this field has spanned 40 years, and it's through DE&I that we can learn about the potential for unconscious bias, exactly as Frank mentioned previously, in the global mobility landscape. Equity is the key to unlocking diversity and inclusion. So I think what I mean is, let's say, if DE&I were part of global mobility's DNA, the accompanying spouse would be an equal factor in the policy and practice of a truly inclusive approach.
You're on mute, Laura.
Sorry, I was saying I had to take a moment to clap. Anyway, no, that's terrific. You pretty much answered my next question, which is, you know, how can career assistance be pivotal to success? Well, you just explained how it could be pivotal to almost failing without it, and good for you for seeking help. I mean, imagine, because so many people out there would not have the wherewithal to figure that out. And yeah, this is one of the major components nowadays. I mean, dual careers, it's not like that just happened overnight, but more recognition of that support that's needed. I'm also curious about the situation where you have a dual career, you have same-sex partners, and this is going to end up sounding sexist, but the same-sex partners are both male. Because let's face it, it's still more common for the accompanying spouse or partner to be female. And any words about that from your perspective? I would imagine your trainers are all well equipped to work with both men and women.
Yeah, well, many of you in the audience will know the diverse cultures and attitudes globally facing the LGBTQ community, right? At REA, we have supported diverse populations, including same-sex couples, neurodiverse families, families with disabilities and impairments, and we have experienced the challenges that they face in having equal access to the job market. Once again, we have the impact of dual careers and also the impact of networking barriers. I'm sure Mercedes can relate to this too, within this demographic. Building a new social and professional network in a new country is key to accessing the hidden job market. However, if we look at an example of a male same-sex dual career couple, we can see the hidden complexities. I can share with you a real-life case study of a talented young Brit, a millennial moving from the UK to Germany. This was pre-Brexit, as part of a same-sex male couple. What was interesting is that he experienced barriers to the job market despite having an automatic right to work as a dependent resident visa. Hidden barriers included formal and complex applications, qualification recognition, language barriers, and the hidden network for same-sex partners is much smaller. It's much smaller because in his case, the expat networking groups were female. They were mainly female. So this could have ended really badly with hidden costs of a failed assignment. So they set themselves a time frame of 6 months, or they would return to the UK. It was only at this critical point that career transition support was authorised. A strategy using volunteerism enabled him to take an indirect route to obtaining a paid contract, which took 2 months. He transferred his skills into an international school setting and after 3 months secured a paid role. But in order for him to feel a sense of belonging, he had to overcome DE&I barriers. He also had to reinvent his work identity to transfer onto the job market via an indirect route using volunteerism and without a social network. So practicing an inclusive and proactive approach to support the needs of this demographic will be of significant value as family patterns become more diverse in the future workplace.
For sure. And here I even just caught my own self with the, female male. And of course we have other possibilities here as well when it comes to gender inclusion. So I should have started this session by saying apologies in advance. We're all, I think, on this journey of learning all the possibilities for diversity, equity, and inclusiveness. So thank you so much. If I may, Mercedes, I'd love for you to weigh in a little bit. You wear, representing CAI, you wear both hats, right? You wear, red hat. Haha. Anyway, you wear the other 2 hats of diversity, of cross-cultural training and destination services. So any particular other things you'd like to add to what Heather Heather's stories that she shared?
Just real briefly, Heather, those are great stories, and they really make the situation come alive. And I know I've worked with REA when we've had clients who have had those unique situations, like a same-sex couple, and you guys were amazing in helping the husband find support, which is so important. But I want to also tie it back to what you were saying, Laura, and that is that because of COVID, we have gone to the virtual scenario more. We always felt like instructor-led training, being face-to-face was so important. So we're not giving anything up by having these virtual sessions. But one of the benefits that comes out of it is that you're able to break it up into smaller modules and give people the opportunity to try things out, go in and learn more about the lack or plethora of inclusive opportunities where they're living, and come back and share and get additional coaching and skills built around how to break in. Because sometimes you have to break in, and sometimes you have to develop the network of, and I loved how Heather said, hidden networks. And I'm sure at Red Hat, people are trying to make those connections at work that can help them break into key groups. Mm-hmm. So COVID has really exacerbated the situation. And we know, for example, in the US, there's not quite a lot of equity around COVID, unfortunately. And I assume this, unfortunately, is a global issue. And so it creates another lens, because our people, those who are actually moving or preparing to move, what is the level of safety and what are the cultural norms around being healthy, being safe, grieving, respecting, etc. That's a whole big thing we could unpack in another session. But basically, cultural awareness really tries to create synergy between the destination service and the cross-cultural training, because what people are experiencing on the ground doesn't always make sense. And I have had the incredible experience of being a destination consultant a couple times in New York and New Jersey. And when I've taken a mom to a school and a dad to a school, and they've come out going, I can't believe how rude that principal was. It's about debriefing the experience, right? Because cultural differences can sometimes seem disrespectful or uninclusive. And so we need to differentiate what is just a cultural difference that I'm not getting, whoop, it went over my head, and what is true lack of inclusion. So it's really not as simple and straightforward, unfortunately. And the world just keeps sending us more challenges to super make our global mobility efforts more difficult. But that's what we love, isn't it? I think
Frank.
it is.
Yeah. Oops, you're on mute, Frank.
I just wanted to add why that spousal assistance is really important. Like to Heather's point, I used to work in an organization where we asked our assignees, like, what is a successful assignment to you? How do we make sure you will have a successful assignment? That is sort of like a CTQ or critical to quality questions that some of you may know that we ask our associates or our assignees. One simple answer, Frank, I have a happy wife, I will have a successful assignment. So that's sort of like really the focus was around making sure that accompanying dependents are well integrated as well as part of the transfer.
Frank, tell us more though. Tell us about what you see as success in dealing with diversity, equity, inclusiveness. I mean, that is the simple answer, right? If my spouse and my family are happy, then I'm happy. But what does it take? Where do you see success in this area?
I think if they have fully integrated into the community, I think that's really where I could see the success of that particular relocation. And it's easy said than done, right? I mean, there needs to be some participation as well from the people who are transferring. We can't all provide all this wonderful program that Heather and Mercedes are actually, leading on. We have different products there from different providers, but first it starts with an open mind from those associates. We know at the onset on whether or not this will be a difficult transfer, or whether or not this can result to a failed transfer. So be able to mitigate at the onset as well. So I think to fully integrate in the community, people who are going on assignment should really have an open mind as well going into an assignment.
Terrific. And while you're talking, besides open mind, can you maybe tell us a little bit about some of the lessons you've learned, perhaps from your own experience, and how having an open mind, because obviously you know something about this, how it's helped you in your own transitions through the various places you've lived?
So, I mean, just maybe a quick background for everyone in the audience. I used to be in a people management role. One started in Asia, and then I was managing a team in Hong Kong, and then later on in the UK, and later on in Czech Republic. And I kept the same management style, but it didn't work in all of those locations. Then that's really why I needed to change my approach in terms of how I can be successful in that role. And the way I did that is really getting involved and just be part of those communities that I'm part of. So like maybe in Hong Kong, for example, high context culture, you have to go out with them for lunch. That's the kind of management approach that you could sort of apply to be successful in that role. But that doesn't work in a high content culture, especially like in Czech Republic, where it's really more around, for lack of a better word, I would describe it as like you just tell them what needs to be done and they'll execute it for you. It's just learning that's sort of like what works in that market. So that would be something that I could share from my experience.
That's so interesting. And I think that's a great example because it demonstrates how much we learn from an international assignment that can be, that transitions and translates into our future experiences as managers. So, you know, I'll just say that in my life too, I early on managed people when I was living outside of the USA, and I had a very similar experience. And it taught me, oh, you know, it's not just a cultural adaptation, but it's just an individual to an individual. Not everyone needs to be managed the same way. Some people do better with micromanagement, and some people are completely stifled by that experience. And as a manager, learning yourself and that awareness of what works for you helps you to understand that there'll be people who are similar and there'll be people who are different. And adapting that style is how you become much more successful. So that's great. Great example. Heather, would you like to share with us what you see as success in that area and any lessons learned? Because we are getting close to the top. We got 4 minutes to go.
You first. What I would say, I guess, is, well, can I ask a question? I would just ask a question of the panel and of the audience. If you were tasked between choosing between your own professional identity or your partner's, or even your partner, I wonder what you would do. Because this is the dilemma that every dual career family faces. This is the reality of that dilemma. So I just wonder, I would like the audience maybe to think about it. They can write contact me at any time. I work with these issues all the time. I research them. And it's just, for me, fascinating to be working in this global mobility industry with this population, learning from it all the time. So Mercedes, I know you've transitioned, you've got multiple transition experience, and your career is just as important and equal to that of your partners, Laura, Frank, each of you.
Great question. Well, Mercedes, you want to give it a little go?
I'm not sure I'm the right person to ask, because I'm a high risk taker. And we know that risk and aversion to risk is a really big determinant of what people end up doing. I'm also, I've always worked from home, always, except for when I opened an office in New Jersey for a Canadian company. So for me, I have a much more portable career. And I think the portability of your career is something to be thinking about. And for me, just turned 60, something that I tell my children about as they have their families. Think about how you can have a portable career, especially in my family. And my choice was to stay home with my children for the first 10 years. So I had 4, so you can imagine why. So I think that it's about really being ingenious and having a support system like REA to help me figure out, how do I make my career more transferable? I was just doing a training for another family, and the lady, the accompanying spouse, I hate trailing spouse, by the way. I hate that term. The accompanying spouse really was very ingenious about what she was going to do. She was a marketing person, and she was trying a whole new career idea for herself, which would allow her to be home with her younger kids and still supporting her husband and pushing her career forward. But before we end, I just wanted to mention that success in DEI isn't only about the metric of how many diverse people we send on assignment and how well we support the accompanying spouses. It's also about measuring how well they integrate. And I think Frank referred to that. And I think our destination consultants are in a very unique spot to measure that. And the relocation management companies, either with their post-assignment surveys or some of their follow-up conversations. And this benefits our clients as well, because it allows them to identify people who are struggling a lot sooner. And I know a lot of you do that already, but add the inclusion question and the equity question to your surveys.
Yeah.
Sorry if I took too much time.
Excellent. Well, with that, I'm going to make sure we stay on time. Thank you all so much, Mercedes, Heather, Frank, for sharing your personal intimate stories. Really appreciate it. Open minds, open hearts, innovation. This is what it's all about. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference, everyone, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Laura.
Those were a lot of pertinent points there. Thank you so much, Frank, Laura, Mercedes, and Heather. Really appreciate that insight. Guess what? We have come to the end of the day one of the Spring Summit. What'd you think so far? Are you going to come back tomorrow where we have the impeccable Isabel Claudel as your host, the animated Andrew Scott, who will lead a scintillating session on sustainability in corporate housing. We also have an intrepid Ignite speaker, Lorna Keene, and she's going to tell us about something that's very close to her heart. I'm going to give you a hint about what's close to Lorna's heart. Inside Out. Inside Out. Are you ready? Thank you for joining us today. It's been a fabulous first day, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow.